Welcome back, Arnold. Great to be with you.
How you doing?
I'm doing well, and I felt like we should start at the beginning with the IRS scandal. In light of the lost emails, Lois Lerner at the head of it. And I thought really to start at the beginning, to cite your article, here was Lois Lerner answering a question in 2010 about Citizens United and the role that she could play or the IRS was being asked to play. Roll it.
And everyone is up in arms because they don't like it. Federal Election Commission can't do anything about it. They want the IRS to fix the problem. The IRS laws are not set up to fix the problem. C4s can do straight political activity. They can go out and pay for an ad that says, vote for Joe Blow. That's something they can do as long as their primary activity is their C4 activity, which is social welfare. So everybody is screaming at us right now, fix it now before the election. Can't you see how much these people are spending? I won't know until I look at their 990s next year whether they have done more than their primary activity as political or not. So I can't do anything right now.
That was in 2010, Duke University, talking about how these groups, these 501c4 groups, hey, as long as it's not their primary activity, they can get into politics, and people are screaming at her to review and to do something about it. Few questions here, Arnold, because you cite this. Who was screaming so loud? Was it the White House?
Well, isn't that the $64,000 question? I've asked that very question before. Who is
Yes,
the
sir.
everybody she refers to? And now that the dog has eaten her homework, ostensibly, I guess we'll never know. Although I have seen some rather clever and I guess cynical people would be the best way to put it, to say, well, look, you don't have to find our hard drives. Just go to the NSA and get the information.
Arnold, and by the way, this is one of the reasons I like your work, and I'm not patronizing, as you know, but genuinely, we in talk radio land, I'll speak for myself. We don't have a lot of time. We got to cover a lot, and we've got to be informed about it. And we got to know the facts, and that's what you do. You bring us the information and you explain it to us. Even Crane Durham can understand. I mean, you should have that as a tagline. Even Crane Durham can understand. But here's my question. In light of the fact that that was the evidence that we could look at the genesis of what has taken place in the sense of her articulating it, and then we have the result of 10% of the people associated with these groups were audited. The average is 1%. If we go to the 100% of the actual follow-throughs on the audits were conservative groups. It wasn't, a random group. It was conservative groups, Israel, keywords, Tea Party, the whole thing. What you have here is the targeting of political opposition and the attempt to silence political opposition during an election. And now we have what can only be analogous to the 18 minutes missing from the Nixon tapes. Would that be fair?
I would say that's more than fair, but what really strains credulity here is not only did they lose her emails,
yes,
but apparently they lost the emails of 6 other people as well, all conveniently tied to this, all conveniently tied to the idea that we might find out just how far and wide this goes beyond the IRS itself, into the Justice Department, into the FBI, into the special counsel's office, who, by the way, is only one of 2 people, Mr. Wilkins, who is appointed by the president. And I just can't help thinking that were we having a Republican administration at the helm right now, and they came out with this explanation, the media uproar would be deafening.
Okay, and we get a little laughter on Morning Joe of the ridiculousness of the excuse. We have Nancy Pelosi doing what you've talked about, citing how many papers have been turned over. It's similar to Benghazi. All these documents. It's Clinton. it's Clinton all over again. How to deal with a campaign or cover up is to say, I've given you all these documents except for the ones that we've asked for pertaining to the information. I can, I mean,
I gave you a million documents, but the one document you really wanted, well, we just can't seem to find that one.
So I'm
sure many of people in your audience are aware of the fact that one of the strategies of somebody who is trying to obscure information is to hit the requestee or requester with so much data that they literally have to sift through it for days and days and days and days. And that's what's been going on with every one of these scandals. They blitz them with a bunch of papers and data, but when they ask for the stuff that they really want, somehow that just can't be found.
And I guess that's what, in light of what scandal we're talking currently, is the IRS. But what questions would you be asking? Because you talked about the media being relentless. I don't think they would stop. They would, but how does that work? Give us some background on how the media actually. We have outbreaks of journalism when we have a Democratic president. It seems we actually have a press corps, that does its job sometimes when a Republican's in, which is great. That's fine. Hold them to account. Amen. But how do they do it? How do they not let it go? And do we have historical examples of them saying, nah, not good enough, we're going to keep asking the question?
Well, I think it's more not so much error of commission as much as error of omission. There's a great website out there for many of your listeners who might not be aware of it called newsbusters.org, and their whole idea is to scour the TV networks to see what they're actually broadcasting. And, for instance, they came up with data that NBC didn't broadcast anything about the Fast and Furious scandal until it was over a year and a half old, and I think the first report they actually gave on it was when Eric Holder was held in contempt of Congress. Now, you can make the argument that maybe it's not germane, but I would suspect that when you have a border guard killed, border agent killed, and somewhere between 200 and 300 Mexicans killed with guns that were run into the country of Mexico by our government, it's hard to believe that wouldn't be news. Also, the fact that Obama issued an executive order for Eric Holder, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not even sure that that's legal.
And so many questions in regard to that. I remember there was a CNN clip we played earlier this week related to Fast and Furious, and it had to do with the fact, I think it's 30, cut number 30. And here's John King asking Elijah Cummings about this and pretty much putting it to him about the discrepancy in the time of Holder's admission of when he knew and how he changed it, and Obama contradicting him. Roll it.
Sure.
When did you first know about the program, officially I believe called Fast and Furious? To the best of your knowledge, what date?
I'm not sure the exact date, but I probably heard about Fast and Furious for the first time over the last few weeks.
He says over the last few weeks. That is on May 3rd, 2011. Listen to this interview the President of the United States, not the Attorney General, the President of the United States had with CNN Espanol back in March.
There have been problems. I heard on the news about this story that Fast and Furious, where allegedly guns were being run into Mexico, and ATF knew about it but didn't apprehend those who had sent it. Eric Holder, the Attorney General, has been very clear that he knew nothing about this. We've assigned a IG, Inspector General, to investigate it.
It begs the question, how did the President know about this in March, and how did the President know the Attorney General knew nothing about this in March when the Attorney General says in May he just learned about it a couple weeks ago?
So they're absolutely, by the way, Newsbusters, vital source. We play a lot of their clips. They do wonderful work, big fans. But you covered Fast and Furious. And June 21st, one of the articles you cite related to executive privilege was 2012, June 21st, highlighting this and asking the questions. And so, again, I will ask this question. Is the White House press corps specifically, have we seen them not let go of something till they get an answer? If we just look at the last 5-6 years, we don't seem to get that.
No, I don't get the impression we get that either. There's not to say that everybody is like that. There's some legitimate journalists out there. I think that Cheryl Atkinson is doing a good job.
Right.
I think it was very ironic that she would file reports and then her own network wouldn't broadcast them.
That's a pretty big scandal.
There's guys like that. Jake Tapper, I think, he's probably to the left, but I think he's a leftist that calls them as he sees them.
Okay, yeah, but my question is, when you have this level of corruption that is exposed through a couple clips and a simple question, John King, I wanted to give him a high five there, and yet still no accountability. Oh, it's too complicated. You explain the executive privilege, the questions about it in your article. Yeah. And it doesn't take a lawyer to understand, but it seems there's an effort to confuse things just enough so we can move on. Is that another part of the strategy?
Well, okay. I've said this on many occasions. I don't know if I've ever said this on your show, but I believe the modus operandi of this administration is very simple. We're going to do whatever we want, and we dare you to stop us. And I think the fact that they have now reached a level of brazenness where they're expecting the American people to believe that 2 years of critical emails are lost because an individual computer crashed, when any dime store IT guy knows that that's absolutely preposterous, that should give the American public the idea of just how far they're willing to push this. I think we haven't seen the end of this yet. I think they're going to keep getting more brazen and more brazen until at some point something happens where even the leftist media has to go, we've reached a bridge too far here. I don't know what it is. I think this is this is pretty close. You got to say this is pretty close. Not only remember, it's not only Lois Lerner's emails; it's 6 other people's emails as well. That's an astounding coincidence. You got a better chance of getting hit by lightning. And
we have evidence that they do back this stuff up. I mean, even I know what you're getting at of the paper trail that it leaves, and there's a number of ways to go, and you can go to there's ways to investigate, but there has to be a paper trail, because this was the testimony of the commissioner when asked about these through Jason Chaffetz. Here's just a brief exchange, and I've edited it for time, but doesn't change the meaning. Roll it.
Commissioner, what email system do you use there at the IRS?
What email system?
Yeah, is it Outlook or you?
Yes, we have actually Microsoft. At least I have Microsoft Outlook.
So you have Microsoft. You go on there and you want to find all the items you sent under your name. How long would that take?
Well, it would take a while because they're not all on my computer. They're all stored somewhere.
That's one of the brilliance of the email system is you go in and you check the sent box, the inbox, and you suddenly have all the emails, correct?
Right. They get taken off and stored in servers.
So they're taken off one and stored in servers, but if you erase it on one, it's still in the server the other, and then there's a paper trail breaking in, right?
I mean, we're laughing because the only other alternative is to weep for the nation.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's and one thing your articles actually come to life because you do cite the quotes and bring that out. And I guess the American people have woken up because your latest one highlights even the former, what's his name? That he's corrupt as heck. Oh, that's Crane Durham speaking, by the way. I believe he is. Harkin. Yeah, he has some different memories of his service. And mind you, I've never served a day in the military. But honor them. But that aside, here's the former Harkin aide, Chuck Todd from.
Oh, Chuck. Okay, you're talking about NBC's guy.
NBC's guy, yes. Because I figured this was your article today, and you cited this, and it's cut number 10. Roll it.
The Obama administration is seen as less competent than the Bush administration was post-Katrina. That's VA, that's healthcare, and foreign
Let's
policy.
show the poll number you call the dagger. Can the president lead and get the job done? 54% say no.
And this is what's amazing here. This is as if the public is saying, hey, buddy, your presidency is over. You may not believe it is, but your ability to lead and convince us that you have the right policies anymore, we're not listening.
So the American people have finally gotten ahead of the press because the press is so incompetent that they understand the corruption of this administration?
I would say yes, but you know, there was something interesting I read as I was reading this, because all of the media, and it doesn't matter whether this was leftist media or rightist media, it didn't matter. They all talked about the Bush administration's Katrina debacle. Okay, yet if you did the examination of Katrina and the whole thing, the Bush administration, I mean, did he make a stupid comment? Great job, Brownie. Yeah. But, I mean, if you look at the actual machinations the Bush administration went through and offering to bring in National Guard and getting refused at the state level, and Ray Nagin blowing it at the local level, and yet here we are only 9 years later, and it is now taken as conventional wisdom that Bush, the president himself, screwed up on Hurricane Katrina. So we are already seeing the revisionist history, even though you can go back and do the research and debunk most of the stuff that was quote-unquote Bush's screw-up. So, and again, I take that as a certain level of carelessness by the media, because they just the lie repeated often enough, I call it, or the narrative repeated often enough is the better expression in this country. As long as it's repeated often enough, it's sooner or later, for both the left and the right, it becomes conventional wisdom. And I think it's important for people to become aware of that, because it gets to the point, you know, there's a great saying by the Russians, you know, we know the future, it's the past that's always changing.
That's wonderful.
I read that one time and it cracked me up.
I love that. And also I think in highlighting that with Blanco Insurrection Act and Nagin's, I mean, it's all there with that. And what you just said about Katrina is the perfect example to expose that. But unfortunately, we've done that, and that has infected every aspect of the news coverage, including our national security. It certainly has taken place with Iraq, with some of the things that are being said now, and you get people coming out going, well, we never should have gone in, and I'm thinking, okay, give me the context here, because we have a lot, and I guess the lie about Iraq, the Bush lied, people died, and that there were no chemical weapons, there was no program. Actually, there was, and Dolfer Report exposed that. I guess I'm concerned about how that's impacting our national security, and we can talk about the border, but we can talk about what's happening in Iraq today. Do you see the same thing happening with the Iraq debate and discussion today, Arnold?
I think the Iraq debate today is so limited because our choices are so limited. I think the best article I've read so far was by Max Boot, who's pretty good on this stuff. Yeah. We have to have a certain level of boots on the ground to, at the very least, direct proper air support if we're really going to deal serious blows to ISIS or ISIL, depending on who you read. And I think the administration, to its credit, marginally, is aware of that and is going to put advisors in Iraq. At least that's what we're being told today. So maybe there's an effort to finally take this seriously, but you know, it's remarkable. Like I said in one of my articles, this is the only administration in history that's intending to end 2 wars on a schedule. Yeah. And you know, that still doesn't get enough play in the media, the utter absurdity of telling the enemy when you're going to bug out. Not only telling them when you're going to bug out, but telling them, hey, well, we're not leaving anybody behind either, so no worries. And here we are. We're still got a scheduled withdrawal date from Afghanistan in 2016. You know, the whole notion that we shouldn't leave people behind. It's like I said, you know, we've still got people in Germany, Japan. We've got them at the 38th parallel in Korea. There are people out there who understand, and like I've said to many of my friends, you know, from the time we declared independence till the time we had a fully functioning federal government, it took us 13 years, from 1776 to 1789, and yet somehow the geniuses at the State Department and to a certain extent in the Bush administration somehow thought we could put together a fully functioning democracy in Iraq in less than half that time. And I don't have any idea what they think they're doing in Afghanistan, which probably puts me on the same level as they are, because I don't think they have any idea what they're doing either.
Best article I read about Iraq and currently what's happening in the sense of what led up to it and kind of getting an understanding of it was your November 4th, 2013 article, Arnold, how Obama abandoned Iraq, which you quote Max Boot in. But my point is, these are things, and actually you cite some great stuff from Gingrich in the sense of where Maliki was going and the history and the decisions that had to be made. But if you want to trace this stuff, this is what it requires. It requires an honest, contextually honest reading of history and what took place. People don't remember that Saddam was captured and Gaddafi gave up his nuclear program within the week, 5 days later. There are a lot of things that are misunderstood. I just thank God for you, buddy, because you bring it into focus and at least people can make an honest decision. We can agree and disagree, and we're all out of time. But thank you, man. Great to be with you. Take care.
Talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Bye. Arnold Allard. I will post both of those articles, his latest on Iraq as well as his November 2013 article, How Obama Abandoned Iraq. Prescient. Yeah. Say the least. That all said, hey, live with honor in your life, compassion in your heart, always keep the faith in Jesus Christ. I want to thank my team. They're awesome. Jeremy, Cedra, and Hannah. Great to be with you all. Jonathan and Jim and the rest of the crew, thank you. We'll see you next time. AFR Talk.